So Zohran Mamdani has won the Democratic primary for the position of mayor of New York. He obviously still has a general election to compete against current mayor Eric Adams and the Republican nominee, I forgot who it is. It's like Curtis something. But I thought today would be a good day to just give my analysis on him as an actual candidate and his chances of winning, and talk about what right-wingers are saying. And that's what I want to start this video with, because Zohran winning the primary has just completely made right-wingers unhinged, and they're not even hiding their racism and their Islamophobia. Just to put this out there, for any religion, for Judaism, Christianity, Islam, you should be allowed to participate your religion, and anyone else who consents to participating in that religion should be allowed to participate and practice that religion, as long as it's not to the expense of others and the surrounding society. That seems pretty fucking reasonable. But no, right-wingers think Islam is just going to kill everybody in New York City. I wish I was kidding. So first we are going to start by looking at tweets that right-wingers have made. Starting with Benny Johnson. Benny Johnson, a known MAGA conservative who doesn't like any sort of nuance. He lacks nuance. He lacks any sort of context. He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about anything. And he's pretty much just a yes man for the Trump administration, obviously, like most of the MAGA content creators are. He tweeted out, "New York City in 2001. We will never forget," referring to 9/11, of course. "New York City in 2025. Elects Muslim jihadist." Zohran has never ever preached about violent uprising or a jihadist movement. So equating him with being jihadist and a Muslim, I don't know, man, that seems a little suspicious. This dude is outwardly saying that this tweet directly implies that Zohran is like similar to the terrorist that committed 9/11. Like, do you understand how fucking weird and gross this tweet is? Then we have Laura Loomer, another MAGA pundit who also is in Trump's ear. She tags Mamdani directly and says that he hasn't even been a U.S. citizen for 10 years. And while it's true he hasn't been a legal citizen for 10 years, he has been living legally in the United States for over 10 years. I mean, his family moved here from, I believe, Uganda when he was a young child. He graduated from college in 2014 and got his citizenship in 2018. So he's been here for well over 10 years, legally. She says he is literally supported by terrorists. New York City is about to see 9/11 2.0. So, because Zohran Mamdani is a Muslim man, because he's a Muslim man and is now the front runner for mayor of New York City is going to have another 9/11. And apparently he's a terrorist sympathizer. I just do you not see the outward, they're not hiding it. They're not even trying to hide it. And then we have my favorite, Charlie fucking Kirk. Bounced around claims of being a racist for years, and it's just, he's finally coming to the light. We can finally see that he's just obviously violently racist, because he tweeted out, 24 years ago, a group of Muslims killed 2,000 people on 9/11. Now a Muslim socialist is on pace to run New York City. I just think it's funny that he says a group of Muslims, trying to equate the religion of Islam and Muslims in general with terrorism. Weird implication there. And then of course he links Zohran Mamdani with those same terrorists. Another weird implication, and there's clearly some obvious reasons as to why he's making that implication, because he's fucking racist. And the last thing I will say on Republicans attacking his character is it's funny that they're calling him a radical who will bring Shia Islam to New York City and delve the entire city under an Islamic regime as if we'd see it in Iran. And beyond the fact that it's just completely racist, Zohran has tweets defending queer people and queer liberation. Do you really think a man who defends queer people and queer liberation would be in favor of a non-secular Shia Islamic state or city? Fuck no. What the fuck? It's just baseless claims. It's ridiculous. So now we are going to get into his actual policies, and I'm obviously not going to tackle all of them, because to his credit, he does a great job of going in detail about all of his policies, and he also just has a lot of them, right? So this would be too long a video. If this does very well and people want to see an in-depth policy analysis, I will do that. So focusing on economic policies for now, one of the biggest things he wants to do is fast fare-free buses. He wants to make buses cheaper, obviously by making them free. You don't even have to pay a toll. Get on the bus, right? It's completely free, and this costs about $800 to $750 to $600 million a year to do. And considering New York City's budget it is about $103 billion. If you make some cuts, move some funds, and as well as increase taxation, New York City will easily get the funds to afford this program. We'll go in depth into his tax plan a little bit later. And then obviously with making the buses free, more people will probably want to use the buses. So how do you make them faster? You build priority lanes for buses to cut through traffic so that from point A to point B quicker, as well as create better dedicated loading zones so it's quicker and smoother for people to get on board or off board from the bus. And also it stops double parkers from, parking and blocking the bus. If this works, this would also incentivize less people to use the subway and instead maybe navigate through the bus system if it's faster and cheaper. That would also relieve some of the burden on subways because obviously they would deal with less people every day. You could see minor productivity increases and unemployment decreases because of this program, because people can actually afford to get to work on time even if they can't live near their workspace, right? In terms of actual unemployment, I don't think you would see much of a decrease, but I think you would see a decent spike in just worker productivity in general through this policy. Now, obviously, this is a big one. It's the city-owned grocery stores. There's a lot of misinformation going around about the city-owned grocery stores. No, Zohran does not want to nationalize the grocery industry in New York City. That's not even possible for him. It's just not what he's doing. That's not what he's advocating for. So the goal here is to stop corporate price gouging, obviously, because if the government is running the grocery store, there isn't a for-profit motive, right? So they don't have to worry about price gouging their consumers. So this gets around price gouging and also uses its government power to try to cheapen the cost of these groceries to a point that it's more affordable for consumers. Now, for the record, private grocers, all the private grocers, your local Walmart, they will all exist. Your Whole Foods down the road is still going to exist and going to be able to operate at the point it always does. There will be, I think he said, about 5 of these grocery stores, one in each borough, so they're not a large burden. What they will do is, they will buy and sell at wholesale pricing, which is overall cheaper and in the long term will cost consumers less money. However, I do actually have a little bit of an issue with this. I think it would be very hard to implement because you also have to take into account for workers' wages, increasing their wages, that sort of thing. And through that, you would have to burden some cost onto the consumer. However, you would probably be able to cheapen the cost of goods because you don't have to worry about taxation. You don't have to worry about making a profit. So you can just operate at a break-even point. As long as you're bringing in as much revenue as you are spending, you'll be fine. You could even get away with bringing in a little less revenue than you're spending, as long as you also get some subsidies from just the government from other taxes, right? The right is claiming that this will cause all these private grocers to go out of business. They're saying that this would cut out the competition that private groceries have, and because of that, they wouldn't be able to operate their businesses, and all the consumers would go to these publicly owned grocery stores. And the problem with that is there's only 5 of these, and they will have limited supply, of course. So not every consumer will be able to go to the publicly owned grocery store. They will still have private grocers, and because it's such a small amount of these publicly owned grocery stores, it wouldn't be enough to really completely cut out competition. And in fact, I think more so, instead of cutting out private grocery competition, it would just incentivize grocers to try to cheapen their prices, boosting the competitive playing field. And another concern I do have with this is the part on price gouging. Grocery stores in general operate at very small margins, and I think a lot of the price gouging you see in grocers actually isn't because of the grocery stores. Sure, it happens in some instances, but I think a lot of it is mainly actually like the farms that are producing the eggs or the farms that are producing the beef, right? Like these suppliers are the ones that are actually gouging the grocery stores, and then of course the grocery stores, to make back their money, obviously you have to put that same price point. So because of that, I think the publicly owned grocery stores, depending on where they get their produce and their supply from, would actually be hurt by the same price gouging that you see at the grocery level. That's a very small point. It still would be overall probably cheaper. I'm curious to how this policy will work. I'm a pretty big fan of this. There are some red flags with it, of course, that I mentioned. We'll just have to see really how it works in practice, how it's set up, because there is a way where this works, there is a way where this fails, of course. So let's just move on to housing. And the biggest thing for housing is the rent freeze. He wants to freeze the rent, meaning it cannot be raised on any tenants in rent stabilized housing, right? And this is about 2 million home units that will be rent stabilized, that have their rent completely frozen. And I'm not a big fan of rent control. I can go into why. I feel like a lot of right-wing economic accounts already kind of have done that. the right does like to ignore the fact that this will have some benefit. Of course, it's going to benefit the tenants that are already in these rent-stabilized homes. This does, however, disincentivize landlords from actually spending money on their tenants and the properties they own, because they can't get as much profit out. If their expenditures are boosted and they have to pay more money to keep their businesses and their properties afloat, then they won't be able to raise the rent. And in some instances, they do have to raise rent. And I am a progressive, but I do agree with a lot of what the abundance Democrats have to say on housing. And something I really respect about Zohran is the fact that he also acknowledges the idea of abundance. He has stated that, yeah, look, my stance on housing has changed a little bit. I do kind of agree with the abundance guys. I think the private market plays a role. And because of that, he wants to build 200,000 more affordable homes by 2030. My only problem with this is that to completely tackle the lack of supply in housing New York City has, you need to build 500,000 units by 2030. So 200,000 is like 40% of the way there. The good news is, beyond Zohran building the 200,000 affordable units by 2030, he also wants to cut some zoning regulations and other regulations, like the parking regulation. You need a parking lot in order to build an apartment here or there. And cutting these regulations will also incentivize private companies and construction companies to build housing units, to build homes. And because of this, you could see another additional 200,000 to 300,000 units being built in New York City. So this would actually match the housing supply shortage that we have by 2030. And what's good about this is the government, from what Zohran is saying, would focus on affordable homes, right? So 200,000 homes that help and benefit the lower income communities specifically, and then putting zoning restrictions and other regulations would allow private companies to build housing for, even the rich clientele or just like the middle to high income earners, because they also have a housing crisis too, of course. And something that people on the left largely ignore as well, which is weird, is that we just need more housing in general. It doesn't matter if it's affordable or if it's high income mansions. We need all sorts. Now, I'm not saying that we'd be okay if we only built mansions. No, we need an equal mix of affordable homes and homes for higher middle income earners and just high income earners in general. He will also fast track 100% affordable developments, which would also incentivize some private corporations to build affordable units instead of just normal units. So you could see a good mix of, obviously, affordable home units and normal home units in New York City by 2030. And I really like this part of the policy. I'm a little concerned with the rent freeze, but overall I do like his housing policy besides the rent freeze. Taxes. Now, this is a big problem with his economic policies. Now, this is a big problem with a lot of his policies, is it relies on the state. He is trying to be the New York City mayor after all, and what he wants to do to be able to afford building the housing, paying for the fast free buses, paying for the grocery store, paying for free childcare, which we will get into soon. He needs to raise taxes, and you have to do that through the state. His proposal is to raise the corporate tax to 11.5%. And he also wants to put a 2% flat tax on all income over $1 million. And I do like these. And this would bring in a total of like $5 billion in revenue, so he would easily be able to afford everything he wants. And I do really like the 2% flat tax. If it's a 2% flat tax on $1 million, that's pretty good. That'll bring in a good amount of revenue. I'm a little iffy on the corporate tax rate. I am a progressive that doesn't like super high corporate tax rates. I am in favor of corporate taxation, of course. But, the same way tariffs work, they do push some of that cost onto the consumer. So ultimately, for corporate taxes, consumers do pay a little bit of the tax itself, but just raising it to 11.5% by itself probably won't be enough to where you'd really see a burdensome cost put onto the consumers. So I'm okay with that, obviously. And then taxing the 1%, the 2% flat tax on $1 million income, completely fine with that. I'm completely okay with that. And obviously, New York is a very Democrat-ran city and state. I live in the state. The problem is they're either very moderate or some are just like Republican. Like, they're Democrats, but they're really Republican. And Kathy Hochul, the governor herself, came out and was like, I don't want to raise taxes. And while I think Zohran could probably get something passed, some sort of taxation increase passed, because with how popular he is amongst his supporters and the likelihood that he's the New York City mayor and the power that comes with it, he could probably influence the state to pass some of this. I don't think you would see the increases he wants, and I don't know how easily this would happen and how quickly it would happen. It could cause delays into a lot of his policy proposals, or compromises into, like, say, we'll raise some taxes so you can afford the free childcare, but we can't give you enough to where you can also afford the free fast buses. And that's like that's a little sucky. That's a little concern of mine. He's gonna have to make a lot of concessions, most likely, but we'll have to see. That's a concern I have with his entire campaign. So another one of his proposals that I really like is free childcare for all children, from all children aged 6 weeks to 5 years old. This ensures that parents of young children will actually be able to afford other things for their kids and themselves while their kid is in good care for completely free. This is a pretty basic policy. We actually just recently see it get passed in New Mexico, of all states. What New Mexico's policy did is actually end up lifting 120,000 people out and above the poverty line. So, and the last thing that I will discuss is his Department of Community Safety. Something that the right has really weaponized is that, oh, he supports defund the police. No, he doesn't. Sure, he did in 2020. That's not what he's campaigning on, guys. He's not campaigning on defund the police. None of his policy on crime has been, hey, I'm going to get rid of police officers. No, under a Zohran mayoral campaign, we would have the same amount of police as we currently have in the city of New York. The difference is we would have more social workers available. And what this does is because you have a mental health crisis and a drug problem in the city of New York. We don't have enough social workers. A lack of social care is available, and police have to deal with these. And what happens is now police are focused on issues that could potentially turn into crimes that they really shouldn't be focused on. Police should not be focusing on the homeless guy who's shooting up heroin in the subway. They should be focused on the people committing crime, looting your local grocery store, beating the shit out of that dude down the street. That's what the police should focus on. So implementing social workers to help out and reach out to homeless people in the subway, people addicted to drugs, people having a mental health crisis, a mental health problem. That will solve these issues before they become violent and allow police to focus on actual violent issues. For example, mental health calls to 911 have skyrocketed in the city by 37%. So yes, police are responding to calls about mental health that they shouldn't be responding to. We need social workers available and expanded mental health awareness and care so that these things don't become episodes to where the police are needed to be involved. The subway system specifically, he wants to create dedicated outreach workers within the subway system that you can reach out to during an episode, during a mental health crisis, to deal with if you are homeless. This means more EMTs available, more peer support, like all of that. And this is stuff that studies have shown time and time again. Less police and more social workers in these sort of situations goes so much more of a long way. So yeah, if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. I really hope Zohran Mamdani can win the mayoral election. I mean, obviously, he's the vast favorite to win. He probably will win. I'm expecting him to win. I think everyone is. So it would be a shock if he didn't win. There's going to be a lot of attack ads against him. The right is going to continue to propagandize around the fact that he is from another country, and no, he's not going to bring Shia Islam, a Shia Islamic regime, to the city of New York. He's not a terrorist. It's just basic race baiting weirdness from motherfuckers like Charlie Kirk, who are like Charlie Kirk and Laura Loomer are crazy MAGA. Like, they are some of the biggest names in MAGA politics, and they're just outwardly being racist as fuck, which isn't a shock because they've been racist, but now it's pretty clear. So yeah, if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all in the next video, whatever that will be. I said like 3 videos ago I'd make a video on Tim Pool, basically attacking him, not literally attacking him, but just rhetorically. I don't think I'm gonna do that anymore because he's just so much better and smarter than me, and there's nothing I can attack him on because he's a genius. So I don't know what the next video is going to be right now. We'll see. We'll see how well this video does. That'll probably, I don't know, maybe 3 views instead of 2. Yeah, so I will see you all in the next video. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. If you agree, disagree, have anything else to add, go for it. Peace.